G'day folks, my name is Sean and this is Air Photography. So in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the new Mini 3 and we're going to be comparing the features and price to the Mini 3 Pro to perhaps help you decide which one is right for you. Both are very similar, but there are some key differences that you should be aware of before you make a decision. So let's start with price first. After all, price is very important and that can be the deciding factor when purchasing a drone. There isn't a huge price gap between the two, but the Mini 3 is approximately $200 cheaper depending on which package you purchase, and of course depending on which country you live in. If we compare just the base kit with the RCN1 controller, you're looking at $559 compared to the Mini 3 Pro, which is $759. Of course, if you get it with the DJI RC, those prices are a little bit different. Now when it comes to flight performance and flight characteristics, both drones are almost identical. Both drones are capable of flying in a level 5 wind, and they both have the same flight speed, top speed being 16 meters per second when in sport mode. Now when it comes to flight characteristics, both drones are identical as well. Both handle beautifully, both have great precision, and they both have the exact same fail-safe safety features. Both offer return to home, both whether you trigger it manually or it's a fail-safe return to home. Both have return to home battery management, so if your battery gets too low, it will calculate and alert you and automatically come home when you need to. If you fly it a little too far and you get disconnected from the controller, again, both drones will come home automatically. So if you're looking for a drone that performs well up in the air, it doesn't matter which one you choose, whether you go with the Mini 3 or the Mini 3 Pro, both fly identically. Now, of course, one of the big differences is that the Mini 3 does not have obstacle avoidance. At the front here, there's just some air ducts, compared to the Mini 3 Pro, which as you can see there has the obstacle avoidance. There's also two more obstacle avoidance sensors there at the back and two at the bottom. As you can see on the Mini 3 here, it doesn't have those obstacle avoidance sensors on the bottom. So that obstacle avoidance can be important to some people, but not to everybody. Myself, I usually have it turned off probably 95% of the time. I find it can get a little in the way when you're trying to get nice close proximity shots. Of course, that obstacle avoidance does come in handy when you're doing things like a return to home or if you're flying backwards because you can't really see what's coming up. So that may be a deciding factor for you. If obstacle avoidance is important to you, then definitely the Mini 3 Pro is the way to go. So let's talk about the camera next. After all, cameras are very important on drones. That's why we buy them, is to capture nice video and photos. The camera on the Mini 3 and the Mini 3 Pro are almost identical. However, there are a few key differences. But I just want to say that both do an excellent job at capturing both photos, videos, and panoramas. If you do a side-by-side comparison of the two, it's very hard to distinguish between them. But some of the differences are, and these could be important to some people. First of all, when you're capturing video, the max resolution is 4K at 30 frames per second, whereas the Mini 3 can do 4K at 60 frames per second. Now that's not important to everybody, but if you do want to be able to capture at 60 frames per second while in 4K, definitely you do have to go with the Mini 3 Pro. There's also no flat color profile. Desync is not available on it. It's only available on the Pro model. Again, that's only important for people who want to do color grading. If you just plan on leaving your settings in auto, then that's not really a big issue. The Mini 3, no matter which one you choose, does a great job in auto as well. Another important factor to keep in mind is that the bitrate on the camera is a little bit lower when recording video. With the Mini 3, it's at 100 megabits per second, whereas the Mini 3 Pro, it's 150 megabits per second. The other important thing to consider, especially if you're going to be flying at night, is that the max ISO on the Mini 3 is quite a bit lower than that of the Mini 3 Pro. The max ISO for both video and photos on the Mini 3 is 3200. And the max ISO on the Mini 3 Pro is 6400. So basically you get double the amount of ISO range. And again, that's not going to be important to everybody. If you fly during the day, you want to keep it at 100 anyways. But it's when you get into the lower light situations, sunset, sunrise, twilight, or flying at night, that higher ISO is sometimes required to make the image bright enough. Now both have a fixed aperture of 1.7, which is really good for low light scenarios, and both are capable of shooting vertical video. Again, vertical video isn't important to everybody, but both drones are capable of it. Both have a nice range when pointing up, all the way to 60 degrees. Both drones have the same capability in that aspect. So now let's talk about features, because this can also be a big deciding factor for some as well. Because there's no obstacle avoidance on the Mini 3, there are some features that DJI has left out. First of all, there's no focus track, which is basically a set of tools of tracking, spotlight, and point of interest. And those tools are actually pretty useful and pretty important to some people, especially if you want to do any kind of tracking or active tracking with your drone. Then something like the Mini 3 Pro is a better option. You can select yourself in the frame, and the drone will just follow you around. While it's following you, it will use its obstacle avoidance to avoid any obstacles, or it'll try to anyways. On top of that, there's no master shots, which again is another intelligent flight feature that helps to automatically capture some pretty incredible content. And then finally, there's no hyperlapses. So if you have an interest to create those motion time lapses, you're not able to do that automatically with the Mini 3. You would have to go with the Mini 3 Pro. Now, when it comes to photography, there are a few missing options with the Mini 3. It's fully capable of panoramas, but it doesn't capture vertical panoramas unlike the Mini 3 Pro. Also, when it comes to still photography, this camera is capable of capturing 12 megapixel photos, whereas with the Mini 3 Pro, you have the option of capturing 48 megapixel photos. If you like to capture bracketed photos that some people use for creating HDR, with the Mini 3, you're able to capture 3 bracketed photos. With the Mini 3 Pro, you're able to capture 5 bracketed photos. So again, some pretty significant differences there as well. Now, when it comes to range, signal strength, and the distance in which you can fly the drones, the transmission system on the Mini 3 is the OcuSync 2 transmission system, whereas the Mini 3 Pro uses the OcuSync 3 transmission system. So you do get better performance. Now, it is very close. Both perform extremely well. The O3 just gives you a little bit clearer image coming back to the controller. It comes in at 1080, whereas the OcuSync 2 on the Mini 3 comes in at 720. Also, for rated range, OcuSync 2 is 10 kilometers, whereas OcuSync 3 is 12 kilometers. Both offer good penetration when flying around trees and in cities where there's a lot of interference. I don't find there's a lot of difference between the two. Nothing anyways that I would base a purchasing decision on. So now lastly, let's talk about flight time, because there are some differences here. And interestingly enough, their cheaper drone, the Mini 3, can fly longer than the Mini 3 Pro. Mainly it's due to that they use the exact same battery, but there's not as much power consumption due to some of those limitations. With the standard battery, the Mini 3 is rated to fly for 38 minutes. If you use their Plus battery, their extended battery, you can fly for up to 51 minutes. Whereas the Mini 3 Pro is rated for 34 minutes when using the standard battery and 47 minutes when using the Plus battery. So not a lot of difference there, but if flight time is really important to you, then perhaps the Mini 3 is a better option. So that's basically it. Those are the main differences that you may want to consider if you're deciding which drone is right for you. A couple other little things just to point out here. You can see here the body styling is a little bit different on the Mini 3. With it, we get these legs here at the front, whereas the Mini 3 Pro does not have that. It's not a big issue, but it does make it a little bit more stable when you're taking off and landing. And it's not so much that this is unstable, it's just when you put this on uneven surfaces, these propellers can actually get really close to the ground. So having these legs on here is just a small thing, but it does help keep the propellers away from obstacles. The other important thing to note is that the Mini 3 at this point in time, at the recording of this video, is not compatible with the RC Pro. Now, that's not going to be important to everybody. Most likely, if anything, you're going to be purchasing it with the DJI RC. But if you're thinking of buying one as a backup, as a spare drone, and you have the RC Pro, as of right now, you cannot bind the Mini 3 with it. Now, that could potentially change with a firmware update down the road. DJI does add compatibility to their controllers all the time, but as of right now, you're not able to do so. Well, folks, that's basically it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and got some value out of it. Give it a thumbs up if you did. It's always greatly appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and we'll see you in the next one.